Well, a slightly low blow to kick off with, Dinesh, I must say. You didn't use your time to prove God's existence either. I think, and I think you'd have needed more time than I would if that's what we were here to debate. I imagine that it was held in common between us and this audience that it isn't possible to decide these matters finally, that no one has ever produced an ontological proof of God that is completely satisfying, nor a disproof that is completely satisfying. However, the burden surely is a little more heavy on those who say, I know that there is a God, and not only am I a deist, I'm a theist, I know what he wants. In fact, I know who his son is. In fact, I'm on sort of personal terms with the guy in ways that are not evident to you. That demands a slightly higher standard of proof, and to say you didn't come up to that scratch, my dear, I'm sorry, is to say the least of it, okay? Now, why be militant, I was asked. Why do you care? After all, if all this is nonsense, why do I exercise myself about it? Well, I'll give you one example straight off. There is a religion that some of you will have heard of. It has 12 imams, 12 holy men, who all serve God, a one God, an only God. One of these imams has gone missing, but is expected back imminently, when he will bring a reign of universal peace and justice. I don't know if any of you paid attention to what I said earlier about the Islamic plagiarism of Christianity, but Shia Islam is essentially a parody of the Catholic faith. Now, the people who believe in this, you said unicorn, I would say tooth fairy, or sinister Santa Claus, propose to acquire thermonuclear weapons by illegal means at present, and to deploy them against not just Jews and Christians, but atheists, secularists, homosexualists, rapists, adulterers. I think they've only got me 3 times so far in this. And to bring about that happy thing that all religions secretly want and celebrate, the eschatological end of days. All religions have this common deformity. They want this to be over. They think what we're going through is just a prelude. Our life is a poor and contemptible thing. Bring on the moment when we'll find the ultimate truth and be able to relax in the Savior's arms, or in some promise of heaven, as the sort we were offered this evening. I say that I think it's a contemptible offer, and would be contemptible if there was any basis for believing that it was real. I'm not going to duck, in case you think I am, the question of atheist and secular atrocities, but I'm going to leave it to our next segment, because it'll take me just a fraction more time, and I'd like to do it in such a way as to pin Dinesh somewhat more to the mat on it. It is argued, though, on this moral point, that those who repudiate God will have no basis for making their own moral decisions or uttering their own ethical conclusions. That without this anchoring and overarching belief in protection, we would simply be in a world of nihilistic chaos, choosing here this and here that option for ourselves, with no anchorage of decency, no ballast of ethics. Well, just consider, if you will, because all of you would have heard that argument many times, as well as this evening. Consider, if you will, what the corollary of it is, if you look at it the other way. Is there anything that is forbidden to anybody who says they have God on their side? Who says that they have God with them? Is there any evil that they forbid themselves to do? Is there any enslavement or rape or dispossession they haven't committed? Is it not the case that, I'll just take the other case of the Shia Muslims, whose claim to a God and to his being the spokesman of morality is just as valid as that of any other religion, as far as I can see? Well, in their religion, it's forbidden to execute a virgin, whatever crimes she may have committed in Iran. Can't be executed as a virgin. But if sentenced to the death penalty and still a virgin, she can be raped by the Islamic Revolutionary Guards and then executed, because she isn't a virgin anymore. A piece of sadistic ingenuity that would not have disgraced Torquemada or the practitioners of the Inquisition, and does show, does it not, that not just in the name of religion, but rather, I would say more honestly, precisely because of faith and the certainty that it gives of a divine endorsement, that things are done and done all the time, and threats made that no decent secularist, no convinced atheist humanist could countenance for a second. And of course, atheism is no guarantee. An atheist can be a nihilist, can be a sadist, can be a fascist, can be a communist. These are sufficient rather than necessary conditions that I'm talking about. But I hope they will, at least to some extent in your minds, ladies and gentlemen, have broken the connection between religion and ethics as demagogically asserted. Thank you.
Yes, we'll now move to 15 minutes of cross-examination with Dinesh getting the first question and the debaters going back and forth. Now, if you have a question that you'd like to ask the debaters, you may, in about 10 minutes or so, begin lining up over there. And the first 3 questions go to King students, and then we will let the fun begin in general. Dinesh, your question for Christopher.
Could you name any scientific law whatsoever for which you have certain knowledge that there are no exceptions?
No, I couldn't. I mean,
Thank you.
I made a different assertion. I said that Einstein says the laws of nature are not suspended. That's quite different. You chose to attack a position I hadn't actually espoused, and you had said yourself that there is an obedience to law observable. I can quote you. Or
but my point was that was an article of faith. That was not a demonstrated proposition. Einstein knew that, and that's why Einstein was a theist. Einstein believed that God represented a great mind that sustained these laws in that way.
You're completely wrong twice. Einstein was not a theist. Einstein was very explicitly not a theist. He was a deist. He said he was a believer in the God of Spinoza, the God that does not intervene in human affairs, that does not answer prayers, that does not take sides in human quarrels, that does not make judgments on human behavior.
Well, Spinoza was not...
That's as far from theism as it's possible to get, and you should have got this by now, Dinesh. You really should.
Christopher, you're a little bit... There's a difference between deism and Spinozism, but I'll come back to that. I want to turn to something else. You asked for how can we reasonably think that God exists? Let me ask you this question. Scientists who begin to look at the universe ask themselves this question: why does the universe have the rules that it does? Why does the universe operate according to the particular dials and parameters it has? What if those parameters were a little different? And the scientists who look at that said, if you change these parameters even an infinitesimal amount, if the gravitational force were slightly different, or the strong nuclear force, or the electroweak force, we would not have this universe, we would not have life, we would not be here having this debate. Now, what is your explanation for how we live in such a fine-tuned universe? It would seem to suggest a fine-tuner or designer. Darwinism is hopeless here because it's not accounting for the universe, only for transitions among life. So what is your rational theory for why we live in a fine-tuned universe?
Right. Well, there's a good reason why no one comes to me for arguments about physics, so I'll have to take, but I'm not ducking the question. Just for your notebooks, ladies and gentlemen, there is a book by Professor Victor Stenger on this subject. Dinesh deals with it also in his book, that makes the bold claim that science actually negates the case for the existence of God.
Well, Stenger says the laws of physics come out of nothing. Do you agree with that?
Further than I would have gone, I'm saying I recommend that you read it. A chasm of tautology yawns at the feet of all those who go in for this argument. Richard Dawkins actually said to me once he thought it was the most interesting argument he'd so far heard or encountered in all the debates we've all had with the faithful, and it is, because there's something extraordinary about it. Of course, also appeals to us, because anything that says to us, you know, you might not have been here, but you are, so that must be something majestic, is obviously appealing to us. It's sometimes known as anthropocentric. Look at the consequences. Look at an example just in the suburb of this argument where we happen to live. A tiny solar system on the very, very edge of the known universe, with a sun that is going to flare up in a while into a red dwarf, go out, having boiled us alive, on the only planet in its solar system that can support, or I think ever has supported, anything like life. Of the other planets, most of them are either or all of them, I should say, are either much too hot or much too cold. This is just